Do you enjoy quilting, but you don't want to worry about that 1/4 inch seam allowance, which is always ever changing no matter how familiar you are with your machine? Well, then foundation paper piecing might be for you. I gave it a try and here's how it went. So foundation paper piecing is a lot of fun. The fabric collection that I paired with it is this collection of pinks and browns. It's called Peach Blossom from Island Boutique. And I have wanted to use this fabric line. It's my favorite one that they came out with this year. And even though I'm a Island Boutique ambassador, that wasn't the fabric line that I got in my shipment to do projects for. So I had to find a project and pitch it, and thankfully Fat Quarter Shop accepted me into the Woven Hearts Sew Along. They sent me the papers and the other tools that you get with it, the ruler, and pretty much the papers is the main one. That's really important. You can't foundation paper piece without the papers. And they did Woven Hearts as part of the fundraising for So Pink, which is put on by By Annie. So I was in the By Annie blog hop anyways, doing some bags for them, and I did a blog post and I have a video on that. So I reached out to Fat Quarter Shop because they were day one and they had the sew along, and I just asked them if I could have an early access to the pattern. And it was already out at that point. They were super sweet and said, hey, it's already here. You can already start planning for it. And then they sent me the papers, which was exceptionally generous because the papers sold out really fast. They bought a bunch of them and it just completely sold out. And it's in stock now. December 6th, I think, was the estimated date. So you can go in and get them. They ordered a ton because now that they know there's a huge interest. So I was really lucky to get the papers and be a part of the sew along and to use my favorite fabric line. So since I had a little head start, I'm starting out with pre-washing my fabric. I'm getting a lot better about this. Now when I get in fabric, it just goes straight into the washer and it's ready to go. This cleans out excess dye and it allows you to pre-shrink your fabric, so that's not surprising at the end, especially if you're going to be mixing different fabrics together. It's nice that they're all pre-shrunk, ready to go, and true to the color. I wash with cold water, a normal cycle, a small amount of detergent, and then I try to do a color catcher for about every yard of fabric that I'm putting in. It's always really exciting to see what the fabric catcher picks up in the dyes. Usually it's one color that really resonates with it. Sometimes they just come out clean. There's no excess dye. It's just a ton of fun. So that's a little game I play now. I go ahead and tumble the fabric on low. It'd be better if I would let it air dry, but I get a little bit impatient. After that, I'm gonna put starch. I only starch one side of my fabric. If I was using regular cotton and not batik, I would spray starch the wrong side because it can build up and just adjust the color a little bit. But since I'm using batiks, I just pick a side and that's what I starch. Starch will add some stiffness and makes it really easy to handle. If you're working with any kind of points, your fabric's gonna shift around and be really frustrating. So if you have really soft fabrics, this is essential. When I have really long cuts of fabric, I'll cut them down to 2 yards, and then I can use my shower curtain to hang them up and then drench that in the spray starch. Once the starch is dry, I'm ready to give it a light ironing and cut everything out. In the Woven Hearts pattern, it has you cut all of the rectangles the same size, and that way you can scramble them as much as you want and make it as scrappy as you want it to look. But I went ahead and I followed the cutting directions on the actual papers. They're 2 different sizes because you have a long star leg and a short star leg. That way I was able to save more fabric when I budgeted everything out, because you're using 8 fabrics is what the fabric called for, and I was able to get it down to my 6 favorites, and I think it still looked really pretty and scrappy. The foundation papers come in a pad of paper. Each page is a block, and then you cut on the diagonal twice so that we have 4 units to make into these blocks. From here, you're gonna follow the numbers. I like to take number 1, and I'm able to see through the paper, especially at the light at my machine, and measure about 1/4 inch between side 1 and side 2. So since I have batiks, I don't have to worry about a wrong side. I just find my placement on fabric 1 to shape 1, and then I can line up fabric 2 right on top of that. Remember to put your stitch length a little lower. Lower is a tighter stitch. I was doing 2.0, which was like the regular one, and it's too hard to rip the paper. I was doing 1.2, but when I made a mistake, it was too hard to rip out the stitches. I did my test block and I sewed things incorrectly the first time. So just take it one at a time, but once you find your rhythm, you can optimize it and do all of step 1 and step 2 in blocks of 10 is what I ended up working with in the end. And then you fold step 2 over, give that a press. The instructions say to give it a trim. I didn't trim a whole lot. I saved myself some time and like just eyeballed what that 1/4 inch was. And then I was able to put on shape 3, fold, shape 4, and 5. So you work on all your units. Kimberly Jolly has a complete better tutorial on this than what I'm describing here, but she had the tip to leave what's going to be on the outside of the block untrimmed. That way you can put your pieces together, sew down the line, and make your block, and then when your 4 units are together, you trim down to size on your final block. That helped me a lot because even though it's really intuitive to just sew on the line, I still had some shifting. The papers are kind of slippery, and not all of my points were completely perfect to a 1/4 inch away from the edge. I still had to fudge with my final cut because it was more important to have my square the size that it needed to be, because you have a lot of these to put together in the quilt top, than to have my 1/4 inch seam perfect. There's some extra steps, like you can use the pinholes and pin it in place and help it with the shifting. I did not do that. So that's quite a bit of time. And where I did not allocate enough time is the ripping of the papers. It's fun, but it does take a lot. I went on The Guy Who Sews, Sean's little live on Saturday, and I was ripping my papers out of my blocks instead of sewing. That does take a lot of time. Get your family involved, get the kids in there, because with 80 blocks, this was a ton of little pieces to bring out. But I mean, if you have the right stitch length, I mean, they will just rip right out. I got all the rows stitched together and I got it on the quilting frame. I did this modern twist pattern. It's by Urban Elements, and I got that on my quilting frame. Just big loops I thought would be a nice contrast to all these sharp points and the very structured grid. And it added a lot of nice softness to kind of tie back to the softness that would be from that color palette. The pinks and the browns and a little bit of turquoise in there. Oh, so nice. And when I got it off the frame, what I just adored was having my binding on. I've never had binding really tie something together so well, but that little brown frame around the negative space of all that vanilla background, beautiful. I love how this turned out, and it was a lot of work and it all paid off. This is just the most like beautiful work of art with so many points I can't do on my own. And I hope you enjoyed it too. If you get a try, go ahead and tag me, send me a photo, because I love everyone's projects that are turning out. It's all beautiful and it's a great pattern. I'll have a link to everything down below. I have a whole blog post on this. You can see images and some of the tips and the links to all the products. So I'll see you in the next video. Happy sewing. Bye-bye.